that is Judaic Studies, a talk related to the Holocaust, because November is usually the commemoration of Kristallnacht, and we've had academic speakers of various sorts. This year we're trying to do something different. Edmund Rosenblum, who'll speak to us in a minute, to give a personal perspective on what he went through, just to listen to his life. He'll speak for about 45 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions and answers, because although all of you guys in the university, you're reading a lot of history and maybe watching documentaries and things like that, there still is great value to hear from someone who lived it and hear the experience. How many times are you going to meet in your life someone who saw Hitler in person, not once but twice? This is something you'll be able to tell your grandchildren. So it's a great thrill, an opportunity. I mean, someone from the greatest generation to come here to Scranton and speak to us about his experiences from Vienna to Omaha Beach. So without further ado, Edmund Rosenblum.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Edmund Rosenblum. I was born in Vienna. Can you all hear me? Yes. And I'm going to share some interesting points with you, and hopefully you can follow me. I was born in July 1920. Those of you who are math majors can figure out how old I am. Now I'm going to take you to different time frames, so bear with me, because I'll take you from one point of view to another. The first thing I did when I was in business, and after X amount of years, I decided to retire. 1990, I retired. I walked over to Adelphi University. I registered for some courses because a lot of my education was lacking. And I figured this is my opportunity to catch up. I'll take you to a short 101 history course now. My professor, as it is his habit, he always wants all his students to get up, introduce themselves to each other, tell them what their major, their year of college, and so on. When it came to my turn, I said, my name is so-and-so, I was born, and I'm here for the same reason that you are. So they were all waiting for the answer. The reason I discontinued my education when I was your age is because I was Jewish. So everybody odd, and they couldn't figure out why one has interrupted his education because of his religion. Now I'm going to pass out some of these little forms so you can pass them around and have a look what my passport looked like. Here, look at it. And pass it on over there, please. Okay. Now I'm going to stop this segment for a moment and go back a number of years. In 1888, a young man was born in Braunau on Inn. His name was Adolf Hitler. April the 20th, the reason I remember because he was born the same day as my dad was, 1888, April 20th. As he grew older, normal young man, his father was a border guard. He was a border guard between Austria and Germany. As it was in the habit of European young people, he brought his father lunch every day, and while his father was eating lunch, he was wondering, why is it my father's a border guard, this is Austria, and this is Germany, and there's a border in between. They speak the same language. Why is there a border? And this thought, north of him, as he grew up into adulthood, it bothered him to no end. Now, I'll spare you some of the detail. He started to grow up. His ambition actually was to be a painter, not a house painter, but an artist. he wasn't good enough to be accepted in any of the schools. He went from Braunau on, and then he went to Vienna. And he just, actually, according to the book, he was homeless. He went from pillar to post, and he tried to get employment, but he was turned on by many, many of the good schools. Now, at that point, he was just floundering, but the thought of connecting the two countries always bothered him. Now, I'll jump ahead a little bit into 1914. 1914 was the outbreak of the First World War. You all may know why this came about, the assassination of the Crown Prince Rudolph and so on. He was served in the army. He was gassed a couple of times. And naturally, he always returned to his people on the front lines. And the war ended in 1918. Now, I'll stop here for a moment because this is the turning point of his career. 1918, according to the Versailles Treaty, Germany lost the war. They had a limited army, a limited air force, and a limited navy. The thought that Germany was not the once proud Prussian soldier, Deutschland über alles, Germany above all. The proud Aryan, tall, blonde, handsome, blonde, blue eyes. It was not exactly what he wanted. Unfortunately, since the German once proud people were somewhat sour-faced, there was oodles of unemployment. There were no jobs to be gotten. There was no food, and this really bothered him to no end. He became very much interested in politics. He surrounded himself with his bunch of, they call them hoodlums. They came later on to be his bodyguards, the brown shirts, later on the black shirts, the SS. They were more unique, the Gestapo type of people. Now, after Bismarck, Hindenburg, the Weimar Republic, they tried to put Germany back on their feet. It didn't work too well. After Hindenburg died, and of course Bismarck died, in the late monarch, William II, he abdicated his throne and he went into Holland. And in 1933, he was elected the Chancellor of Germany. Now that was the turning point. He says, I'm going to do all the things that you people want. Even though we lost the war, we're going to rebuild, we're going to put a chicken in every pot, we're going to put a car into every driveway, and we're going to restore Germany to its original strength, Deutschland über alles, and he started the thought of the Third Reich. That's going to last 1,000 years. He started to indoctrinate people with hatred. He indoctrinated young people, 5, 6 years old. But the only problem that we have is the Jewish people of Germany and Austria are in full control of our destiny. We have to get rid of them. We have to, I don't believe in intermarriages, and he appointed a man by the name of Adolf Eichmann to make it Judenfrei, which really means free of Jews. And he did a fairly good job of it. He rounded up people for no reason at all, put them into a concentration camp, accused of plotting against the government, and therefore they went from store to store and really did a hell of a job in Germany first. At that point, coming back to Austria, the people after the war, they pretty much, we had a two-party government. We had a Christian Democrats and we had Social Democrats. Every 4 years there was a pretty peaceful transition of government, and they got along pretty good. The Austrian people were pretty much satisfied with their lot. Give them a Wiener Schnitzel and give them some good music, walk into the Vienna woods. They were happy. This was not the case in Germany. His hatred towards the Jews, and that we have to just annihilate them. They did everything possible. In Germany, they stripped the people of their citizenship. A doctor could not go into his hospital, a lawyer could not go into court of law, and they were just going from store to store, indoctrinating little kids with a paintbrush, Jude, J-U-D-E. This went on until 1938. At that point, he wanted to unite Germany and Austria. So he called the Chancellor of Austria by the name of Dr. Schuschnigg. He invited him up to Berchtesgaden, and he says, look, I want you to give me Israel. Schuschnigg said, I'm not at liberty to give you anything. I have to consult with my people in Reichsbund and so on. So I said, well, I give you 48 hours. I want a peaceful transition because I don't want any German blood to be spilled. Well, it seems that 48 hours was really not enough for them. After 12 hours, Hitler marched into Vienna. Now, I'm coming back now to my part. After I finished school at the compulsory rate as 14, and there was a little wave of anti-Semitism. My father's business, who was a tailor, fell down a bit, and we felt there was a little wave of anti-Semitism in Iran. On March the 12th, 1938, we lived in a very nice street, in a very nice neighborhood, but there was a Sephardic temple across the street from us, a very stately, lovely temple, who was there for many, many years. Now that Monday morning, we woke up with a loud bang, big explosion. We went to the window, looked across the street, and there was the temple in flames. What they did, Hitler the night before, he had his troops stationed at the Sudetenland border in Czechoslovakia. He had the troops come down from Munich, and that morning they went into the temple. They took out the Torah scrolls, the very sacred scrolls that had the 5 commandments, according to Moses he wrote, and they put them into the inner courtyard. They poured some gasoline on it, and took all the prayer books, and they lit a fire, and there was a big bang, and that was the beginning. If you're interested to look at what the temple looks like, here you can pass that around. So from then on, it was Bedlam. Trucks, German infantry took over Vienna. The Jews went into hiding because they knew all the direction, all the animosity, all the hatred would be going towards them. They wanted all the Jews, particularly the Orthodox Jews, if you're familiar with the ultra-Orthodox with the long beards and the side curls and the hats, as it is before any other election. The streets were vote for Schuschnigg, vote for so-and-so, vote for so-and-so. They rounded up all these old Jews, they laid them on the floor, they gave him a paintbrush, a short one, scrubbed the streets, they were laying on the floor on their knees, and they went with scissors and they wanted to cut their beards. And the wailing was unbelievable. I can still hear it in my ears, what went on. And from then on, it was turmoil. They went from street to street. You couldn't call the police or the fire department. You couldn't call any law enforcement to quell all the rioting that went on. My father, who had a little tailor shop, closed the shore. A couple of days later, there were trucks going from store to store, broke open, or others just went with the key, opened up, and they helped themselves whatever they could. Just hordes and hordes of people went down, and they did a pretty fair job. People who were somewhat involved in politics, they were immediately picked up and put in a concentration camp. Many of them were just cut on the street and just in cold blood, killed right on the street. Well, unfortunately, it's an unpleasant thing to recall. Well, the people were scrubbing the floor, all the soldiers surrounding them, then they went there and urinated right on top of them. So this went on for a number of months. While we're on the subject of these terrible things, I may mention you all heard about the Kristallnacht, which happened, and they destroyed all the synagogues. They torched them, they burned them, and they did what they could. Unfortunately, it was a terrible thing that caused it to happen. There was one young man by the name of Herschel Greenspan who lived in Paris, and when his word got to him that his parents wound up in concentration camp, he went to the German embassy that was in Paris, and he wanted to see the head ambassador, but he happened to be out of town. But the second or the third in command came out to see, what can I do for you? And without any hesitation, he pulled out a pistol and he killed him right at the embassy. He obviously was killed at the same time. So he wanted to avenge what happened to his parents. Unfortunately, they didn't do the Jews any good at all, because they continued with their plundering and all the things that they did to Jews to get rid of them. That was a very good excuse for them. So that all happened in the year 1938. Meanwhile, coming back to myself and my family, we spent most of our time in hiding. The people, the house that we lived in, gave us shelter. They hid us on the top floor. There was a wash kitchen, unlike we have today, washers and dryers. They had a kitchen that everybody could use, so we were hiding and looking down what went on. I could go on and on and on, and I don't want to bore you with all the details. At that point, my father said, naturally, since you can continue anything else that you want to do, I'm going to make you a tailor. And he taught my father's trade, which was not unfamiliar to me. But our relatives in the United States who came here in the mid-20s, they said right away, we have to get all the kids out. We have to do what we can to get them out into this country. They did quite well, fortunately. And they started proceedings to get us visa. My sister and myself, who was 3 years older than I, at the end of 1938, my papers came through. And actually, in order to get the papers, you had to have a passport. So the papers that you had seen a little while ago, I stood in line every morning from about 4 o'clock in the morning, go from one agency to another, because in order to get a passport, you had to prove that you were not running away from the law, or you paid back taxes, or anything at all that was against you. They would not release you. But fortunately, my record was clean, and the United States government gave a quota system to every nationality. Since I was born, and my sister was born in Vienna, we had no problem. The United States opened the doors. My folks who were born in Poland, they had to wait a year until they got their visa. So at the end of 1938, the papers came through. The passport was in good order. They paid for the passage. We went down to Zurich. From Zurich, we went to Cherbourg. And from Cherbourg, I came we boarded the ship for the United States. Like I mentioned before to Mr. Shapiro, that the name of the boat was the Aquitania. It was a Cunard White Star ship. It took about a week until we got here. Naturally, we came to Statue of Liberty. Everybody went aboard ship and had tears in their eyes. My aunt, my uncle were waiting for us on 86th Street at the pier. I'm condensing a lot of things because 95 years it's difficult to put into 45 minutes. And big hoopla, they made us a big party that Sunday. The first thing I did Monday morning, I went to night school, I registered for night school. I went to James Monroe night, and since I was a tailor, somebody had to give me an address of somebody on 38th Street, Manhattan, a coat factory. I went there, I got a job right away. Didn't pay much, I got $10 for the entire week, but it was a job. But I came home with tears in my eyes. My aunt said to me, "This is America. You don't like one job, you take another job." So sure enough, there was someone that had a better position, and I got a better job. I think I got $36 a week. I took an apartment with my sister. We managed nicely. So I'm jumping ahead a little to that ill-fated day, December 7th, 1941. You all know what happened in 1941. You shake your head. Okay, Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor, Sunday morning at 7:15, 240 planes came over Pearl Harbor and attacked Wickham Field, Hickam. And of course we had, unfortunately, all the ships lined up side by side like you park your car, which is a big no-no today. They knocked on most of the ships. Unfortunately, I was there on vacation not so long ago. The Arizona is laying on its side, and the bubbles are still coming up. And then actually there's all sort of plaques there, all the 1,100 soldiers, sailors who lost their lives. So that was 1941. A little later on, our President then, FDR Roosevelt, he made a declaration of war towards the Japanese people. And if you know a little bit about your history, the Japanese wanted all the territory, all the islands surrounding Tokyo, the Midway, the Corregidor, Iwo Jima, many others. So they were able to occupy those islands while we at Pearl Harbor couldn't do a thing to help them. But it didn't take long. We rebuilt the ships and we got new ships and planes and whatnot. That's a different story. 1942, after Roosevelt made a declaration of war, General Hershey, who was in charge of the selective service system, came out that everybody has to register for the draft. Everybody between the ages of 18 and 30. I was 22 at the time, lived in the Bronx, and it included me. I had made a declaration to become a citizen. It comes in two parts. You make the declaration, and then after they invest who you are, you become a citizen. So I registered for the draft, and sure enough, about 3 months later, I got notice to report to the Grand Central Station to be inducted. My mom wasn't very happy, but I was gung-ho. So I went down, I passed the physical with flying colors, went out to Camp Upton in Long Island. They handed us a uniform, and that was it. Just a uniform, shoes, a hat, and a shirt. We put aboard a train to Camp Lee, Virginia. That was a basic training camp. Camp Lee, Virginia was right outside of Richmond, and they told us the basic rudiment of becoming a soldier. I was given a rifle, I was learned how to shoot, how to march, how to salute, all the important things that is in. So that took several months, and then after the basic training, we were assigned according to your background, to your religion, or according to your trades, to the outfit that would be most suitable for you. Now, since I was a tailor, I wound up in a very unique company, the 531st QM Salvage Repair Company. Our company consisted of 180 people, and we could repair anything on the field. We've had tailors, shoemakers, plumbers, carpenters, opticians, you name it, painters. In other words, if you went to a town, which we did, there was no electricity. All we had to do is take out generators, repair the plumbing, do anything to put people back to work. Unfortunately, come to that later. Now, after basic training, our outfit was picked to go overseas. Now, you all know that June 6, 1944 was D-Day. D-Day was basically for the infantry, combat infantry, the 101st Airborne, the 82nd Airborne, paratroopers, ships, 2-3 miles out in the water. They bombarded all the beaches, all the beachheads. They were fortified by the Germans. They had big, heavy guns. However, their problem was they ran out of ammo. We had enough. The only problem we had, the weather was not in our favor. On that June 6th, the weather was like today, cloudy, rainy, misty. The 101st Airborne, they jumped behind the line they wound up on trees and steeples, all the places where they were not. Our navigational system, the northern bomb sight, was not that accurate either. However, there was a lot of fighting going on. Meanwhile, my outfit landed on Omaha Beach, not on D-Day, but we came up at the third wave. That was the end of July. We came, as I had mentioned before, the ship that I came with was the Aquitania. The ship that I went back from Boston to Southampton and Liverpool. What was the name? The Aquitania, a converted troop ship. So, on Thursday, I believe it was a Thursday morning, it was a nasty, nasty day, and we had kippers and potatoes for breakfast. We were in the English Channel, and we lined up. We get a parachute, you know, if you've seen, no doubt, planes that have to discharge their people in an emergency. There's a chute, so we put our equipment between our legs. We went down into the landing barge. Fortunately, the gas that they used in the First World War was outlawed by the Geneva Convention. They could not use gas warfare. So the gas mask that we came to England with, we turned back. Fortunately, there was another big package of impregnated clothing that we were supposed to put over our uniform. So we took the gas mask, left it behind. We knew how to sniff gas, mustard gas, and all the various gases. So our captain made a big statement. He said, look, I want you guys to relax. There are only two things that can happen to you. If you get wounded, the war's over. Hospital bed, white sheets, nurses, you go home. If you get killed, the war's over. So I want you guys to relax. Okay? So we went down to the beach. They dropped the gate. We went up to us in water here. We had every 3 guys were assigned a machine gun. I was the little guy. My two buddies, one carried the barrel, one carried the tripod. I carried the tripod, and the other guy had 2 boxes of ammo, 50 caliber. Walked up the hill. Unfortunately, what I saw up on the hill was not a very nice sight. see if I have some pictures here. Crosses, cemeteries, bodies stacked up in mattress covers. There was an outfit called the Graves Registration. They unfortunately picked up all the bodies, stripped of their uniform, put their dog tags between their legs, between their teeth, and sent them home. The cemeteries that we have here, they were undug. This was just temporarily done. And then they had to bring him back to the United States and give him a proper burial. Now, we got on top of the hill, we got into trucks, we start marching hedgerows, Rouen, Caen, St. Mary d'Eglise, always looking for snipers, always looking for snipers. After a couple of days, we lived in pub tents. We had no shelter. Pub tent is a little tent of those of you know, the two shelter halves, they're buttoned together with a center pole, and you put your raincoat underneath so you don't get arthritis. And you were handed K rations and C rations, some Spam, and some toilet paper and 3 cigarettes to keep us going. In the morning, we had cereal and coffee, that's about it. So this went on for a couple of days, and we kept moving forward. Every day was different. One unfortunate incident happened. I was sitting I spoke a fairly fluent French, because in Europe you must choose a language, and I spoke an almost perfect French. And I was one of the drivers, since we came to a lot of roadblocks. Rumors had it that there were German paratroopers who jumped behind the line, who spoke English. They took uniforms of dead American soldiers and posed as Americans. So when word reached us, the MPs, the military police, stopped all the convoys and checked with flashlights for familiar faces. I had driven for a while, and I was sitting in the back of the truck. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, with the flashlight in my face. And there was an MP, and he said to me, "Who plays first base for the New York Yankees?" Number one, I never cared for baseball. Number two, I didn't know the answer. And number three, I spoke with a German accent. So the guy whips out a .45 and puts it against my chest. So my Captain Bliss came running. Hold it, he's one of my men. Sure, he speaks a little bit about a German accent because he just came from Europe. But he's one of my men, he's not an imposter, I assure you. So my heart started to pound a little bit, and it cooled off. So we got back on the truck and we continued on our journey. So we did a little fighting in the distance, and quite honestly, but in order to get into the heavier fighting, we had some basics, okay? We had some basic training. What we needed more of a combat background. So in Compiègne, there was an advanced station, the 28th Division of the infantry, the Keystone from Pennsylvania, oddly enough, had lost a lot of losses, and also taken a lot of prisoners as well. So we were without our trailers to operate efficiently. The people in the camps, we needed some more combat training. So they took my company, gave them some combat training. Hand-to-hand combat, how to put the bayonet where it hurts the most, mortar, rocket launchers, bazookas, and so on. And one part is called the obstacle course, where you go to a very intensive course. You go across a body of water and you go yourself on, from one rung of ladder to the other. Unfortunately, there was too much weight on my arm, and my arm dislocated from the rest of my body. It just came out loose, hanging down. So I plopped into the water, they pulled me out, they cleaned me up, they sent me down to the infirmary, and they're going to send me back to the hinterquarters. So I says, look, if there's of any help, I speak German. I could be an interpreter. It's just what we need. We've taken a lot of prisoners. We don't know how to communicate with them. This was not exactly the high command. So they cleaned me up. They took us into a little room. There was a man next door to me on a typewriter, and there was a Captain Bliss who was sitting next to him, 2 MPs in back of him, and there was a 45 sitting in front of me, unloaded, but it was just for effects only. So when they brought in the first prisoners, I said to him, ich bin ein Jude, und Sie müssen mir die Wahrheit sagen, sonst werden Sie sehr bestraft. You Jewish? Sie sind ein Jude? He says, I've never seen a Jew before. I thought you have some horns. I said, not really. So what we wanted to know basically is troop movements. We didn't want any big high command secret. We wanted the troop movements, the weapons they had, what directions they were going to. And they pretty much, they wanted the war to get over with and they were home to their families. So this went on for a number of weeks. And by the time we moved forward outside of Paris, at that time, times before we went into Paris, this was around May of 1945. And we set up headquarters there. We were located with the prisoners in a called Reims, outside of Paris. Reims, they call it, Reims. It's called the Champagne capital of France. And we operated from there. We put the prisoners to work. They had to shine all the shoes, put in new shoelaces, clean the streets because there was considerable damage done in all these little towns. We put them to work. They were very good workers and very willing. They had 3 meals a day, so they were doing just fine. So that time, officially, the war was over. In Reims, I have pictures of the little red schoolhouse where the armistice was signed. Eisenhower was there. The Russians came from one direction, we came from the other direction. We liberated a lot of concentration camps. I had met some of the people that they had no food, no nothing, and I got them money and food and whatnot so they can wait to go to Palestine at that time. So they were just skin and bones, a terrible sight to look at. So we too had a little rough time. My hand healed up a little bit. I wore a sling and it's still, until this very day, I'm a little limited in my arm movements. So we were in Reims, sort of taking it easy. So word got to us that our outfit was destined to go to the Pacific. Meanwhile, the trailers that didn't come on time, they finally arrived in Cherbourg. Good. So I went back for the 28th Division to my original 531st, and we were getting ready to go to the Pacific. Meanwhile, I couldn't send any word home because once you're in a troop movement, you cannot send home, Mom, I'm going to the Pacific. So I couldn't write home at all, but this is a different way that I met my wife, so that's a different department. If you have time, I'll tell you about that. So we packed up, we went down to Marseille, 180 people of us, and on Bastille Day, which is July the 14th, we boarded the ship called the Chapara, heading towards the Panama Canal. En route, August 16th, now hear this. The war in Japan is officially over. unconditional surrender. So I surely thought they'll make a U-turn and head towards New York Harbor, which did not happen. We went to the Panama Canal. If you ever been to the canal, it's a fascinating thing because the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Oceans on different level. So you enter 6 locks and they put water in there and your boat goes up. Interesting if you have nothing else to do. Take that trip to the Panama Canal. From there, we went to New Guinea. From New Guinea, we got a lot of shots because for malaria and yellow fever, because a lot of the soldiers were just laying in, recuperating with high fever. But fortunately, nothing happened to us. From the Philippines, or rather from the New Guinea, we went to the Philippines, to Manila. In Manila, we were assigned temporary quarters, and the Philippine government was, if you remember, was invaded by the Japanese. General MacArthur came and he deliberated, he sent them all home, and he originated again to be on their own. The Philippine government was sort of a something under the jurisdiction of the United States. We had to put them back on their feet. So the people that had all the know-how with plumbing and electrical work and carpentry, they were very, very instrumental putting them back on their feet. And in order to greet the new commissioner who was assigned to greet him, there was a fellow by the name of Paul C. McNutt. He was a former governor of the state of Indiana. And he was assigned to be in charge of all the activities with the United States government. So in all the excitement that took place, they got ready for his arrival, but what they did not have is a flag to greet him, to welcome him. So going to the Army records, they came across Eddie Rosenblum, the tailor, the Betsy Ross of the Philippines. So one of the reporters of the Stars and Stripes, the newspaper, came up to the archives and he found out exactly what the flag looks like. And he drew me a picture. And I made a flag. That's what it looked when I was young and handsome. So there was a big presentation of the arrival of Paul C. McNutt, and I was given a medal from Washington for what I did, my contribution. Honestly, I don't know what happened to the flag because I've been in touch with the Philippine government. They don't know what happened to it. It says it must have been one of the warehouses. Anyhow, that's what happened to me. And then, of course, I taught, and there was another 2 tailors there. We taught the girls how to make dresses. I made patterns, and they had a warehouse and showed them how to run sewing machines. And I put the Philippine government back on their feet economically. And it wasn't bad. The war was over. They had also X amount of Japanese prisoners. They were later on, I think, sent back to Japan. So it was a long journey. It was to me, it was a fascinating thing because having my background of Europe and my contribution, what I could have done to the United States. So as I look about this room here, these are all young, vibrant young people. The future of this country is in your hands. I had my share of living with a dictator. Personally, I like living with a democracy. We have a peaceful transition of government every 4 years. No gunfire. You may not be happy with your president, you may not be happy in your Congress, but our basic principle, the kind of liberty that we enjoy, only democracy can give you. I feel that the future of this country, and I'm an optimist by nature, is in your hands, and you're going to do a hell of a good job. Some people may be lawyers, doctors, or even presidents. Who knows? You know, I feel the word democracy is a derivation of the Greek, demos and kratos, the power of the people. And you're the one that are going to carry the ball. So all I can leave you with, good luck. Whether you're a junior or sophomore, you're going to graduate with a Summa next month. I hope you do. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for allowing me the privilege to be here. And if there are any questions or any that you may have, shoot. I'd be happy to answer it. Okay?
We have time for some questions, if anyone has, about life growing up under the Nazi regime or in the U.S. military. I'll just start with a question because something Mr. Rosenblum told me was very interesting. Most people, and if you read most of the books, they talk about how Austria was really the center of Nazism and anti-Semitism, even more than in Germany. I mean, Hitler comes from Austria, Eichmann as well. But your experience was not that growing up.
You know, my folks grew up with the Austria-Hungary government. That was under Kaiser Franz Joseph. My father was in the Austrian army. He was also drafted in 1910. He rose to be a sergeant, and he was in a prisoner of war camp outside of Vienna called Wieselburg. I can show you his commanding officer, the colonel. He was so fond of him. He had just gotten married, and he supplied him with 3-day passes every couple of months because he conducted himself in a wonderful thing. When Hitler came in, and food was almost non-existent. You couldn't forget about meat or chicken or steaks. The basics, potatoes or stale bread. The people that he served with during his reign in the army came to Vienna and bought us stuff so we could survive. There was a man in our building. People used to call him, he was a handyman. They called him a Sugar Walter. His name was Walter. Whatever you needed to be done, your paint job or clean the basement, whatever. He lived with his sister. And that morning, when the bombs went off there at the temple, and people running from all sides, you look out the window. Where's Walter? In full uniform, with a cap and all. But what he did, he stood in front of the building, and as they wanted to enter the building, he said, "Raus von mir, sind die keine Juden hier. Gehen Sie weg von mir. Ich bin in charge." He protected all the Jews in that building with his uniform. Michigan Walter. My sister was in touch with him. He lived in California with his other sister. So it is hard to determine who was forced into it. I told Mr. Shapiro about that, a music teacher. They taught my brother how to play the violin. He too wound up in a full uniform. And my mother was very brazen. She says, "How could you wear the uniform? You're a professor." She says, "If I don't wear the uniform, I'll be in jail." So they made him the conductor of an army band. So, sure, there's bad people. There's a couple of rotten apples all over. You listen to your news every morning. There's some rotten apples. I'm ashamed. And yet, It's part of life. You know, they say a lifetime of happiness would be unbearable if everybody in this world is just happy, 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 happy. What do you do for an encore? You put you on your feet. Hey, maybe I'm not so good. I said to my beautiful late wife, unfortunately, she passed away last year. She was at my side always, no matter what we did. We had 66 years, good, wonderful years together. Those of you who are married, I wish you'd have the kind of a life that I had with my wife. Never fought, never something wrong with me. Whatever she said, I was a good listener. Always listened. We always compromised, always compromised. And like I said, I'm ever so grateful for this country for giving me the opportunity to do all the things. I came with a shirt on my back, I had nothing. But I worked hard, I had a wonderful business. Being a tailor is a wonderful thing to meet some wonderful, wonderful people. Sports personalities, county executives, politicians, I had them all. I was a scoutmaster for 6 years. I raised 2 Eagle Scouts. They did it on their own. I got doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, they all me. I'm a respected member of my community. I have the pleasure and distinction having people like yourself endorsing me. So thank you again for coming and your attention. It's been a real pleasure. I'm in awe about the beautiful buildings that you have here. I mean, I go to Adelphi. I'm still a student at Adelphi after 25 years. I've got all sorts of diplomas and I got all sorts of citation. Hillary Clinton signed my diploma. So I'm ever so grateful for what I did. But this country gave me the opportunity. And that's what counts. You won't find it in any other country. So hang in there. Thank you again. Have a good evening.
Anyone have any questions, final questions, before we say goodbye to Mr. Rosenblum, who came all the way from Long Island to give you a glimpse of personal history?
How did you meet your wife, Mr. Rosenblum?
Okay.
You have 5 minutes?
5 minutes, and that'll be the last question, yeah.
5 minutes?
Yeah, it's a good story.
When I finished I had my basic training in Camden, Virginia. And I was assigned that time to go abroad, to go to the Pacific. I could not write home to my mother. My dear Mom, I wrote her almost every night. Dear Mom, I'm okay, fine. The man that slept in the bunk next to me, his name was Manny Davis. Manny Davis was a pharmacist, and he was destined to go to Europe. His company was destined to go to the Pacific. So Manny, I keep repeating, Manny went to the Pacific. The first thing he did every night, when he came out of the mess hall, he took his wife's picture and he wrote a letter every night. So one evening in jest, I said to Manny, that's a good-looking woman. Does she have a sister? Yes, just like her. Just like her. Sure enough, I started to correspond with her. But quite honestly, all the other girls that I corresponded with, they sent me cartons of cigarettes, even though I didn't smoke. They sent me cookies, homemade cookies. They sent me socks, knitted socks. So she sent me nothing. So I stopped writing to her. So Manny went to the Pacific. I was about to go to Europe, but how do I tell my mom that I will not be able to communicate with her? So it hit me. Why don't I send that girl, her name was Shirley Levine, tell her to call my mom and tell her I'll be seeing Manny soon. And I kept underlining, I'll be seeing Manny soon. And sure enough, she called on. He gave her my mom's telephone number. She called my mother. My name is Shirley Levine. I'm a friend of your son. He's fine. You won't get any mail for about 2 months, but he's okay, blah, 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 blah. I got home February the 9th, 1946, and they made me a big party. All of my relatives made me a surprise party. As my mom said, aren't you going to thank that girl that kept calling me, because she came pretty friendly with Shirley. I said, sure, I wanted to see Manny here. At that time, I already had 4 kids. So I took the train. I had no car. The Bensonhurst, it's a district of Brooklyn. I went there and said hello. I met her folks. I saw Manny and his wife Pearl and the children. And after we said hello, and how nice you look, I already had on civilian clothes. I says, where would you like to go? Want to go to a movie, or you want to, where would you? Oh, she says, anything. I said, let's go to New York. I haven't been to New York for a while. Let's go to Broadway. So we went down to Broadway on a train, down middle of Times Square, and there was a big sign there, Latin Quarters. Lou Walters. Who's Lou Walter? The father of, what's her name? She just retired. Barbara Walters. Barbara Walters. So it was a nightclub. I shouldn't even mention it to you people. It was a striptease. Anywho, so I took her home like a gentleman. I held her hand. I said good night, and I went home. And a year later, we got married. A year later, 1947. And like I said before, we came from different backgrounds. Her father, don't go in the rain, you'll catch cold. Don't play tennis, you'll hurt your elbow. And I came from a different type of background. My father was racing motorcycles in 1920. I had a motorcycle. Until 2 years ago, I went skiing every winter. I'm a fairly good skier. I've been a horseback rider, I play a little polo. I did all the things, but she always encouraged me. Do this, do that. She never said, don't. And whenever we had something, I listened to her. I put myself into her shoes. Maybe you're right. I bought a business. Everybody says, don't do it because you're going to lose your shirt. She says, I'll manage. We'll do it. Let's give it a try. It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. So here I am, without a wife, and I miss her, and I love her. Part of life. Life goes on, right? So good luck to all of you.
Thank you very much. Okay, everyone, thank you all for coming out. And see you at our next event, hopefully.